So, just what is waiting in store for us on the second floor of the Tokyo Mesh? Well, that is waiting for us, so before we can really get into our in-depth tour of the second floor, we do have to run away as quickly as possible from this extremely dangerous monster, which I think we already outran. I can swear this thing seemed a lot dangerous before. Oh, it's still dangerous. So, we do have some areas that we can quickly duck into. And the good news is the first room we happen to stumble into does have the helpful information terminal. So we can go ahead and take a quick look at this and see if we can't get a basic layout of the floor. Now, the residential area is pretty limited and, honestly, very straightforward, as you can tell. It's only got a northern and a southern residential area. I'm sure we can explore those quickly enough, but what is most important, though, is up here in the north, the central corridor. This is going to be our main means of getting around, but it looks like to really access it, we're going to need some type of transportation pass. So I guess we're going to have to look around a bit in the residential area and see if we can't find one of these passes. And already we can see one of the massive changes for the second floor. We now have a different static strain for rooms that are just going to immediately kick us out, so I guess it's good to keep that in mind. It's also good to keep in mind that these passageways that are very close together, sometimes you may end up hearing monster noises through the wall, but hey, we found our first nice resident of the second floor. She doesn't really have too much to say, just that there seems to be some kind of monster around and it has everybody a little jumpy, which I fully understand. Especially in these starting areas, these much more cramped corridors do not allow for much in the way of dodging. Still, I do appreciate that we do have another tile set for this area, though honestly it confuses me quite a bit what the aesthetic they were going for here is. It gives me the impression that we're in some kind of old style attic. I wonder how Camia feels about it. It's good. It's good he's honestly contributing more than I would have expected. Still, he might have some usefulness coming up. I mean, I'm sure there must have been some reason why we thought he might be a better option than Naomi. But we finally stumble into a room with some random baubles to investigate, such as a completely broken typewriter. But next to it, we do finally find a pass. And it's with this that we should be able to access that central corridor and hopefully other areas of the second floor. Also, there are some books over here, but apparently the older a book gets, the more useless it becomes, so why do we even keep them around? In this room, we do stumble across a somewhat familiar name, Rise. It's a name we heard from Natural Mika. This was the stinky fellow that I guess gave her that somewhat broken down Walkman. And Rise is apparently the #1 treasure king of all of the Tokyo Mesh. He has a veritable cornucopia of rock and roll posters and wooden boxes, and well, he fully admits that some of the things he's come across are not totally on the up and up. But it doesn't matter because he's the treasure king, and that justifies everything. But outside of Rise here, there are a few other boxes around him that we can investigate. And you would think that some of them might have something useful in it, but they mostly just kind of support the fact that Rise here has a very bizarre personality. Almost, I would almost say malicious once we look at this box here. He sees no problem stealing from kids and the elderly. I mean, at least he didn't murder them, he just left them robbed of all their possessions, so yeah, that's always good. And most importantly, down here, he's especially touchy about this box, as it has some weird piece of electronics, but he lets it slip that apparently this came from a gentleman named Tetsuyo. And that might come up later. We have heard the name Tetsuyo from the person we invariably gave the headphones to. So we might be able to do well by Tetsuyo by maybe filling them in on the fact that Rise has robbed them. Yeah, with all that out of the way, we have pretty much covered all of the residential area. It's a pretty straightforward area, and it's probably going to be the only real straightforward area in all the second floor. Well, what's the fun in everything being straightforward? I mean, isn't the real reason we came down to the Tokyo Mesh in the first place to get horribly confused in a government installation? So here we see the very interesting means of how we're going to be propelling ourselves around the second floor. This mailbox apparatus, well, it acts something like a turnstile, if you will. And if we happen to enter in one of the passes, that happens. So we heard, we heard from, I think it was Brawny on the first floor, that there were some people living in the cow pens in the livestock area, and it seems that maybe living in these pens might not be doing the best mentally for some of the residents down here. This little girl seems to have a second personality that comes out through Bicky the bear. And Bicky is especially nonchalant about telling us that we are more than likely going to die a horrible, horrible death. And before we can really question her, she just up and vanishes, which pretty commonplace for the NPCs we find out here, but it definitely shakes up Kamiya quite a bit. This might not be the murderer's paradise he thought it would be. But we do happen upon another invisible NPC here. And he doesn't really tell us anything new immediately. Just kind of goes over the fact that all the shutters are closed because of the defense mechanisms and that the stairs have been blown up. But he does reveal an interesting piece of information here, and that's the fact that the holy ring that has been chasing after us could possibly have a means to get back to the surface. Their little kidnap elevator, if you will. And there could be the slightest possibility. We don't want to hold our breath on this possibility, but we could go talk to them and see if we couldn't use their magical kidnap elevator to get back to the surface. Obviously, though, this is not the brightest plan in the world, considering we've already seen them try to kill us previously, but Kamiya immediately does not have any want to even entertain this idea, and, well, he decides to go a little bit overboard, and that little girl probably spooked him too much, and, well, do we want to stop him from killing this random NPC, or do we want to allow it? Well, let's see both options. What happens if we allow it? Yeah, if you thought Kamiya was joking around, nope. He is definitely packing heat. He is definitely stone cold gangsta, as you saw from his pistol stance. And if we needed any kind of reiteration about the fact that he is fucking crazy, he just said that that person's fear was a black rat that has now jumped inside of him. So, let's keep the rats at bay by trying to convince Kamiya not to kill this guy, which you would think might be a bad idea, that he might decide, hey, maybe we are prey, but he's actually kind of cool about it. And we did manage to save a life. I don't know what ramifications that might have in the future, or what might have happened if we did allow him to kill that person, but I don't know, maybe that person later on will save our life mysteriously. If anything, though, I get the impression more and more that while Kamiya is packing heat, he only seems to want to use it against other people, rather than the monster. But as we are in a new area, we might as well check the information terminal. See if we can't get a better feel of the livestock area, as it is a lot larger than what we are probably used to, especially that central square there seems monstrous in size. Overall, though, there's not too many places we can go to here. There's the central area. There's also a northern and southern office. And I figured since it does mention that they are a manager's office, maybe we can possibly find someone in there that can maybe give us a helping hand. Because as of right now, we are kind of stuck in the livestock area. Because that central corridor is, well, it's very particular. If we happen to go back and try to go back to the previous area, we would not be able to. Our pass is a one-way ticket. So, well, we are either going to live our lives here in the pens, or We're gonna have to find some means to get to those other areas. Also, I'm still trying to be as cautious as possible. And again, we are in very narrow hallways, and these are exceptionally long and don't lead to many places where we can hide. But hey, it's someone we've actually met before, Sweeper Leno. We met him back on the first floor, but he either has a very selective memory, or this might be a different save, I'm not entirely certain, but yeah, he does not wish us to sit in his office. So that seems to be a dead end, which is good. At least he had a nice rocking soundtrack for his personal office space. Yeah, it's definitely a bit off-putting to have such incredibly long hallways with no places to really hide out. I don't think we could duck into any place relatively nearby outside of those intersections. Like, I don't think we could hide out in those circular areas at all. And here in the other manager's office, we find QI Erica. And she asks us about Tetsuyo, who we technically kind of do know about, but if we say no to her, we can get a little bit more information. Namely the fact that Tetsuyo is very good at fixing things, and we could possibly find him in the second floor factory area. So while that is good to know, well, we still are not getting any closer to finding our way out of the livestock area. So now, as we've made an almost complete circuit around the outside, it is time to go to the more dangerous area, the livestock area, namely the central livestock area. Because this somewhat open little pen area here is pretty much where the monster is going to hang out. And sadly, this is where we are going to need to really do the bulk of our exploring, because there are quite a few rooms in here, but the pens are not symmetrical. In fact, the placement of the rooms is kind of hard to put down. Good news is, as long as you have an open ear for any kind of monster noises, you can probably elude the monster well enough, but yeah, the main problem is just really trying to get your bearings in here and find the rooms that you need to find. Good news is, I know mostly where we need to go. The bad news is that sometimes when you do find the areas where you need to go, the answers are not always as clear as they could be. Especially in the case of Believer Marami? Sure, that sounds Japanese. But yeah, the Believer here has a series of questions that they want to ask us, and well, there's really no detriment to getting the questions wrong, but the answers are kind of trial and error. So for this first one, we find two birds. They are both writhing in pain, so which one do we help? Clearly the white crow. Come on. That's baby questions. Learn that stuff right out of the womb. But let's say you have an entire city. Who lives in it? Well, I mean, clearly you don't want to live in a town of babies. That's fucking Village of the Damned right there. So, adults. But it's really the final question that's a bit of a stumper, because if I had to choose between the oppressiveness of the dark ocean or the limitless voids of space, I would probably choose neither, because both of those sound very terrifying. But, well, let's stay grounded on planet Earth and go with the ocean. Sweet! We are now the proud owners of a sighing flute, which is definitely what we came down here looking for. Yeah, duh. Especially, since the people that play it are ones with true darkness. Whoo! God, look at what the fuck is that? Alright, well, we're gonna put this in our pocket and assume that we need this for something. But yeah, as far as I can tell, there's no place anywhere in the game that we could go to that will help you with this believer quiz. But you got a 50-50 chance, and it's only 3 questions, and you can do the quiz as many times as you want, so it's just bizarre. So we've been having pretty good luck avoiding the monster in this pen area, which is a lot more difficult than it seems. Its patrol is especially random, or at least it was in my practice runs, but in this office we can only investigate the trash bin. And by doing so we do find half of a pass. And as you can probably imagine, you can't really do much with half of a pass. The good news is that we only have to find one more NPC, and that NPC is pretty close by, just one row over amongst the pens. The bad news is that this NPC is, I assume it's meant to be some kind of comic relief with the mess's mother, Awaji. This incredibly confused elderly lady calls herself the matron of the mess, and she supposedly is super helpful with information, and we try to press her for some information about the elevator, but in comedic old person fashion, she constantly forgets the question. So she is not as helpful as she probably thinks she is, which is fine, because she does offer us the fact that maybe we should go talk to Sweeper Leno. He's certainly in the know for this area, and even though he might not seem immediately friendly, maybe something has changed since we've talked to the matron of the mess here. So it was the only piece of advice she could give us, so we might as well go ahead and investigate it. Leno's office is not too terribly far away. And this has been, well, pretty easy floor so far. No horrible monster encounters, no heart attack inducing scares. And I mean, well, the people have been weird. They've been shit, so that's never gonna change. And while initially it might seem Leno is saying the same thing to us, instead, he says that, oh, you've talked to that old woman? Well, now I'm gonna be relatively friendly to you as I can be. Yeah, now, the case is that if you did manage to talk to him on the first floor, he would recognize you immediately, and he would be friendly to you, but if you did happen to not talk to him, you could work around it by talking to the matron there, and he would then go into a spiel. So it's a little bit of a side area, or a little bit of a side quest, if you will. And he does offer us a means to get into another area of the second floor here, but well, it comes with a bit of a price. Apparently the second floor is a little bit stricter than the first floor, and apparently only people that are the bosses of a particular area have access to these passes to get around from area to area. But Sweeper Leno here is apparently, I don't really know what his position is, but let's call him a janitor, so he has like a janitor's key. And he is willing to offer us a deputy position in the janitorial force here if we happen to help him with a little bit of a problem he's been having. Namely, there's a band of thieves. And he's not able to actively look for these thieves because they know he's coming, because he's Vash the Stampede. And he wants to know if we are willing to help him with these thieves. And obviously we have to, because otherwise we'd have to live forever down here with the matron, and that's really not my idea of a good time. So by agreeing to hunt down these thieves, we do get a pass into the next area. And with that, we can finally leave this horrible livestock smell and get on to our real job of hunting down criminals in the Tokyo Mesh. That, surprise, surprise, this is going to become something akin to Snatcher, but instead of killer robots, we're going to have to deal with, I guess, people like Rise. So that's always something to look forward to. I mean, it's at least not having to deal with that horrible monster, right? Oh. Speak of the devil, okay. That was particularly lucky. Especially since we are about to have a heart attack. But it doesn't matter, because we can now safely enter the pneumatic tube and head off to the next area.